Everybody, it's Michael from GotchaRocks.com, and today I wanted to show you how to get a perfect solder seam. We've been working on this ring and a couple other projects. So I just wanted to show everybody how to get these two ends that make up our ring to just come together flush. If you have gaps on either side, it's difficult to get it to solder together. It'll also make the ring weak at that point. So the better you can get those two ends to meet, the better your ring's going to be. So we'll get into it. All right, so now that you have your ring made, and we have our ring right here that we've bent, we're going to have to clean up this seam where the two ends meet, which is right here, and we'll do a close-up of this. All right, so if you have something like this, a ring, and the seam isn't quite matching up, what I first recommend is to open it up slightly. Don't worry, you'll be able to close it up easily. And I'm just trying to open this up enough that I can get a file in here and file this area. And then flip it to the other side, clean up this side. Alright, and what I like to do is just kind of push these together and see if it matches. Now that actually matches pretty well, but that won't allow me to show you the trick. So let's screw it up a little bit. I'm going to take this and make it so there's a big old gap like that. So you've got a spot here where it rounds out and a spot on the bottom where it rounds out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch these back together, and then we're going to run a saw blade through it. Okay, so I want you to think about this side as 12 o'clock and this side down here as 6 o'clock. So you're going to put your pliers, your ring bending pliers, here at the bottom, and we're going to give it a little squeeze. Okay, and that's going to bring those two ends together. Now you want to make sure that the two ends line up right here and here, and sometimes there's a little bit of an adjustment, so let's adjust it just a little bit. I'm just going to pull this end up just a little bit. I'm just doing the creepy handshake. I'm not bearing down on it. And then I'm going to go to 9 o'clock, squeeze that a little bit. Over here to 3 o'clock, squeeze that. And now I have that end back together. Adjust this a little bit, just so they match up. Okay. Let's take a look at the anatomy of the saw frame. On the saw frame, we have the handle, we have the blade, we have thumb screws here, here, and here at the top. We have one wing nut. The first two thumb screws, here and here, are used to attach the saw blade. These are loosened, and you can pull the saw frame or saw the blade out and then add a new saw blade. On the top, we have a thumb screw that is used to adjust the length on the saw frame for your saw blade. Usually you'll have to adjust this once, and then it'll be good to go for all your saw blades. You have one other wing nut here at the end, and this is just used to secure this thumb screw to the saw frame. All right, so the first thing I want to show you is what direction your saw blade should be going in to the frame. So I want you to pay attention to this. We have all these little teeth that are on your saw blade. This is your saw frame, and we want the teeth to be pointing out from the frame and down, so that if you were going to run your finger across it like this, it would kind of grab your finger a little bit. So often what I'll see people do is actually flip this around so it's going the other way, and it doesn't cut very well, or they have it inside and it doesn't cut at all. So you want them to point down and point out. Okay, so we're going to hook an actual saw blade to this saw frame. So I'll leave this here in the background. right there. So we have our saw frame. When you first get your saw frame and you have your tiny little saw blade, and this is what goes in there, you need to make sure, I'll set this here, that your saw frame and your saw blade will work together. So here's how you do this. When you first get your saw frame and you have your saw blade, push it against one side here, and you want about 1/2 inch to hang over onto the other side. So 1/2 inch overlap. Alright, if you find that the saw frame and the blade gives you too much, like this is way too much, we need to adjust it. You just loosen this thumb screw a little bit and you can slide this down and adjust it just to the right spot, and then tighten it up. Then add, let's see, so we need to add a little bit more. Adjust it, a little bit bigger. Okay, that looks pretty good. That'll work for what we're doing. Alright, now let's attach the saw blade. As I said before, we want to have the teeth of the blade pointing down and out. So one way you can find that is to very softly, with your fingers, don't grab this and pull on it or you'll cut yourself, but just gently feel it, kind of run your fingers up here, and you'll feel the teeth grab just slightly. If you do it the opposite way, it'll feel relatively smooth and it won't have any resistance. So when you find that it grabs a little bit, that means that the teeth are pointing down if you're pulling from the bottom. Okay? And I also know that I'm getting resistance on this side and none on this side. So the blade will go into the saw frame this way. The first step to attaching the blade, after you've figured out where the teeth are, I just balance this between your bench pin and I just kind of put my chest against it to hold it just like this. I loosen one side so I have both hands free. And I attach the blade on one side only. Okay, so that's nice and loose. Next, after that's done, I apply a little bit of pressure to the saw frame. And if you can see this, you can see that the blade, as I squeeze it in, goes like that. So we want to create just a little bit of pressure. And that's it. We want a nice high C, and you can play a little music too. That's it. One more time. The blade should be pointing down. All the little teeth should be pointing down. This is your saw frame. This is your saw frame. This is the blade. That is the blade. This is how it should look. You want to start, when you start to cut, you'll cut on the down stroke. Alright, so what you want to do is place your saw blade at the top, and this is where we have a little bit of a gap. And the idea is to run the saw blade through this, and it's going to basically catch a little bit of both sides of the metal, and it sort of acts as a file and it makes a perfect seam. So I'm going to concentrate on doing that. Don't push hard, let the saw just gently work through, and just pay attention to how I'm using the saw blade. Nice long strokes, not little tiny strokes. Very light pressure, just let it follow the path of least resistance. Almost there. Make sure that your fingers are not in front of the blade, because it comes through like this. I always put it right about here so that I have a little stop, so the bench pin will stop it. Let me show you. Alright, so I ran the saw blade through it. And then I just hit this top portion with some sandpaper just to clean it up so you could really see this seam. And you can see that it's perfectly flush all the way along here. And remember, I had really kind of gouged up this side and that side. So we had a really big gap here and here, which is often what, you know, people with maybe a little bit less experience will kind of run into. So this is just a nice little trick. It'll take you a couple times to get it. But I think once you tried it and you kind of perfected it somewhat, you're just going to thank yourself that you learned it. So that's it. So the next step is to add the solder along here, and you'll have a ring. You just have to do a little bit of minimal cleanup, and you'll be able to put this on your finger. Well, I hope that helped, and that's how I created a perfect solder seam for any of the rings that I'm working on or any of the pieces that I'm fabricating. Don't forget that you can get tool lists at gotcharocks.com. Also, please subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up if you thought this helped you out. And if you have any questions whatsoever, I'll be happy to answer them. So just leave me a comment below. And that's about it. Just remember, this is, you know, it's all about practice. So you're going to have to try it a couple times. One really good suggestion somebody gave me when I first started out is just simply make a ring out of silver and cut it and screw it up and then trim it up and do it again and again and again. Just keep practicing that. Before you know it, you'll be an expert. So thanks a lot, and have a great day. Bye.